Hello, folks. Welcome to another edition of Al's Joint. I'll be joined today by my co-host Dennis Painter as we jump right into the madness coming out of Washington, D.C. From the State of the Union address / lies to the death of Lindsey Graham, and also we'll touch base on the Todd Blanche confirmation hearing. So as we pay homage to Stevie Wonder and heaven help us all, let's take the gloves off and let's get at it. Where we are again, Brother Painter. How are you today? I know you're bombarded with all this negative news coming out of Washington, D.C.
I feel like I'm looking at a nut house in Washington, D.C., and I believe there's at least one nut with orange hair living there. So, in that way, it can be classified as a nut house. And then you got the Republicans who are licking his behind, or some say kiss his behind, but I'm saying licking his behind. Uh, they belong in the nut house as well. It's just crazy what happened last night with this. I wouldn't call it the State of the Union because there was no unity there. It's not State of the Union, it's a state of the disunity from Trump.
Yeah, that's an understatement. So let's jump right into it because right away some of the media outlets decided they weren't going to air it live because they knew it was coming. They knew it was a bunch of lies. They get the speeches in advance, right? So they get an idea of what it's going to be about, and they looked at it and said, "Hell, this is bullshit. We've heard it
Right.
before. We're not going to disrupt our regular scheduled programming that people want to see to go back to this pack of lies." And he jumped right in, feet first, into the lies, right? He blamed China for everything, but not one mention of Russia and Putin. And if that don't prove to folks that he's Putin's bitch, I don't know what else would.
Well, to me, it's interesting that, and you're correct that the other news media got to see the speech, and they're saying not only are we not going to be televising false uh, information, we're not going to give him that platform now, and I think that's a good move for our news stations. Now, I had to end up watching it on CBS after I found out ABC and NBC wasn't going to watch it. And the journalist actually, in my opinion, did a good job of analyzing his speech. And his speech boiled down to that what he was saying is not factual. What he was saying is not true. And that it can be taken out of context by people who don't do their research or don't understand. It's like, China, has all our voting information. Our voting information is public. I could go get it. Okay, you can go get it. It's not like they, are grabbing our voting machines. They can't do that. So, uh, and of course, Trump is saying the radical left, once again, putting a label on people who believe in true freedom. He's calling us the radical left. We believe in the true freedom without interference of our elections. And he's trying to put a stop to that. And for those voters who weren't old enough to vote at the time, going back to when Obama was first elected, um, the powers that be in the Republican Party, all white, met that night. They could not believe that a man of color was elected to be president of the United States. And they decided, how are we going to stop it? And what they said was, we're going to prevent people from voting. And their determination was it was the students, college students, and the elderly that put Obama over the top. So they've been coming after um, uh, mail-in ballot voting and that type of thing ever since. Now they can't say, well, we want the elderly and the out-of-state college people not to vote because that'll come back obviously and vitamin S, so they're blaming everything else. They're blaming China, they're blaming the immigrants, they're blaming anything they can to project this lie.
Now, the person who they should be targeting is Elon Musk. And I said it on earlier podcasts, and I'll say it again. I believe that the 2024 elections were rigged in Trump's favor. I believe that Elon Musk went into the swing states, and my belief is that he manipulated the data enough in a close election that turned the tide. And that's why Trump is so adamant about cheating, because he knows he's been involved with it. And he's shocked when it didn't work in 2020. So he thinks that he was out cheated instead of the American people really didn't want him. And that's why he's having a problem with it. But some of the stuff he highlighted on was ridiculous. The brown burn bags from Obama, saying that they don't know what was in the bags, but they said they found brown burned bags. Like Obama's administration just left half burned bags laying around for somebody to come and pick up. The Maduro election was rigged in Venezuela in 2020, and that's how he came into power, by China, which is no proof of that anywhere. Of course, he attacked the networks. And what the scary part is, all this goes back to the Epstein Trump files, that he is desperate. And people need to understand he is desperate because what's in those files are so damning and so outrageous that I believe half of MAGA will turn on him if that information gets out. And I believe that we got to be careful and we got to be prepared, because when you get a person that's desperate, that know everything that they have may come to an end, when that information gets out, he'll do anything he can to stay in power.
Well, I want to try to comment on a couple things you said. One is Russia was not mentioned. Russia is giving instructions to Trump how to overthrow our government, in my opinion. That's my opinion. Now, why would we take an arch enemy, which is Russia, and not say, they're trying to disrupt, our elections, which they tried to do because they favored Trump. And that's why, Trump's not mentioning them. The second thing is the brown bags about Obama. Well, he didn't mention the fact that he took classified documents, boxes and boxes of them, down to Mar-a-Lago and hid them for the purpose of selling them to our enemies, okay? Or at least for the purpose of selling them to somebody to make money off of it. He didn't mention that he did those things, and that the FBI had to come down and gather those things back, or gather them up and take them back to Washington, D.C. He had sensitive information that he took out of the White House for the purpose of harming this country. And he didn't mention any of that. So, and then you go back to Epstein. I think this whole thing, and I look at it as a mingled, I don't know, goal, if you want to use it as that, is one is to have a king in the United States of America, never have elections again, okay, and to cover up the Epstein files. What he did last night showed me that he is scared of these midterm elections. He knows what's going to happen. All the polls show that he is down, okay? He is not a favorable president, the worst rating of any president at this stage of the presidency. So he knows those things. So how am I going to stay in office, stay out of jail, not get impeached? Well, I will stop the elections, or I'll make people believe that the elections are unfair. And that's what last night was about. It wasn't about the truth. It was about lies and about preventing the truth to actually be out there.
Well, we should warn folks, right? And we had this discussion between ourselves before we came on air about folks voting by mail. We need to have a major push to get as many folks to vote by mail as possible. And your thoughts were that if you vote by mail, you're free to be a poll watcher and be a poll protector. We can make sure we get folks at the polls to protect those folks who aren't going to be used to what's coming down the road. Be it Donald Trump is desperate. So I think folks need to understand: vote early, mail your ballots in, and far enough in advance so you're done. And the folk we are asking folks who do mail it in, come out to help poll watch to protect those vulnerable folks they're going to prey on.
Well, here's where we are. I think that, and Trump said it, he's going to be lining up military people with guns. And I think the white supremacist group's going to join them with guns to try to intimidate people from even voting. And we need strong people there that have already voted by mail to get people into the polls past all the guns and that type of thing. So that's what I believe now. I believe Trump has already targeted the places he wants to put the military or put ICE or put the white supremacist group. And those areas are where, there's strong progressive movements or progressive ideas, and they're going to vote progressive. And he knows that if he allows those people to vote uninterrupted, his ass is in trouble. His ass is in jail. Okay. That the Epstein files are going to come out unredacted. His image to this country will be absolutely clear and absolutely damning to his reputation. He can't have that. And then you take a look at all the money and stuff, the corruption that followed his election, the money and corruption that his sons have gotten, his son-in-law has gotten, that he's gotten. You got a 20-year-old son in college made $120 million the first year he was in college. Now, how in the hell did he do that? Well, it's money laundering is what they call it. But those are the things that he's definitely afraid of. And it told me that he knows that if the progressives continue to push, continue to stand up, that election is not going to go his way. We have to push the fact that we're not going to be able to get it done with our hands in our pocket. Okay. We're not going to be able to do it sitting in our easy chair. We got to get our butts up. We got to get our hands out. We got to hand out leaflets. We got to be talking to people. We got to be knocking on doors. We need to be out there protecting democracy.
So to me, the scary part is that who they're going to target and where, right? Because they're not for the congressional races, they're going to target the swing areas, right? The swing precincts where those particular Congress folks are vulnerable, right? For the Senate, they're going to target the swing states, the go after those in those campaigns. So we have to be prepared. We know what's coming. They gave us their game plan. We just have to be prepared for it. Can we push back? Yes, we can. We can do it, and we've had bigger challenges than this. Not all at one time, but we face bigger challenges than this in certain areas. So we just have to be prepared to do what you suggested and make sure we have folks out there early who are able to make sure vote by mail, volunteer to get folks back to and from the polls, volunteer to be poll watchers, make sure folks aren't being intimidated.
Well, I want to comment on something that you raised, which I think is a good point, that we've had other fights, other difficult fights, to preserve this country, preserve our Constitution. On our 250th anniversary celebration in Washington, D.C., there was the white supremacist group marching 2 by 2 with masks over their face, flying the Confederate flag. Now, for people who do not know, the Confederate flag represents a number of things. One, it represents the support of racism, okay, which we've been seeing taking place across this country ever since ICE started this attack on the immigrants. But that's what it stands for. The Confederate flag stands for people who wanted to break away from the United States of America. In other words, they hated the United States of America. And the people flying that flag are not, American-loving citizens. They hate America. Okay, they want a separate country, and they want a country where the white rule. All right. So yes, it was about, back then it was about racism. Now, when I was growing up and people flew the Confederate flags, as well, I'm a rebel. Well, no, you're not a rebel. You know, you're a disloyal American is what you are when you put that flag up. So people need to understand that. And that was a huge fight. And unfortunately, people, thousands and thousands of people lost their lives, hundreds of thousands. We're going to be heading that same direction, I think, in the coming year or years, because Trump has started, if people remember in 2015, that the media was corrupt, there's deep state, that there was election fraud. He started that in 2015. Problem is, he won the electoral vote. Now, he didn't get the popular vote, but he won the electoral vote. So now, did he cry and say, "Oh, but those are bogus results"? It was corrupt. No, he accepted them, although he was surprised. But he was ready to, start dividing this country, and that's what he's up to. He was up to in 2015. He wants to break his country away and divide it down the middle. Maybe not state by state, but by people. He wants to keep the left, the right, whatever you want to call them, separated and fighting with each other. That's what China wants to do, and that's what Russia wants as well. But if you believe what he said last night, then him winning the election in 2016 by electoral vote was fixed. Okay? Him winning in 2024 was also fixed. Okay? That's what he's saying. Our system, even though it voted, he got in, is broken. It got him in. All right? Now he's trying to say, okay, I'm in now. I don't care what the MAGA folks say because I didn't bring the Epstein files out. His goal is not to ever step down. He can't afford it. And when I say afford it, he can't afford it in terms of the criminal charges that are going to be pressed against him. So if people use their common sense and say, wait a minute, he's saying that we have corrupt elections. Why is he in the White House? Oh, he's there through corruption. So.
Well, you think about it, and his administration was in charge when the so-called 2020 election fraud happened. So is he going to discipline, or charge his guy with election fraud? It was his administration, and he doesn't even think. He does. He doesn't care. He doesn't have to think because he thinks that the 30% of his followers who are left are so gullible and they're so eager to hear something that won't make them feel bad for what they done. That's what's happening, right? They need to hear something. They say, see, I wasn't wrong when I elected this fraudster or this grifter or this pedophile or this rapist. Anything they can find to justify what they did, they'll attach to. And I need people to understand, Trump knows this election, the midterms, he's going to get flooded. He's going to get wiped out. I believe we're going to take the Senate as well. The gap in Congress is going to be overwhelming, but he needs to have that 30% left because he still needs people to pull off of January 6th again.
Yeah. I agree with you, Al. I think that's where he's always wanted it. To get military control, you have to have military action. Okay. And that's where he's headed. And so that's what the January 6th was. It was not necessarily military, but it was something that he encouraged. He, helped organize. And he said, go do it. And then he sat on his hands while people were getting hurt. Okay. While they were breaking in to the White House. And then it wasn't until much later that, he stepped in, and it was only because people told him to. Now, people are hollering, kill Mike Pence, because Mike Pence would not change, his mind on verifying the vote. If you want to see corruption, look at Donald Trump when he was insisting that Mike Pence alter the outcome of the election. If you want to see corruption, look at the January 6th rioters and breaking into the White House, breaking windows, beating people up, spraying them, hitting them with things. Okay, people died. If you want to see corruption, go to the files in Georgia where he called them up and said, "I need you to find, quote unquote, find, 11,000 plus votes." That's corruption. Okay, people need to remember this stuff.
Well, you also heard that his the teleprompter guy, has made $100,000 from betting in Vegas over the length of his speech or certain words that he used in his speech because he has access to his speech. It's because he has to, of course, type it in. However, I believe that that number is probably closer to a half a million, not 100,000, $500,000. Now it might be $100,000 in last year before they started the investigation. But this is his fifth year in office, right? Fifth, 5.5 years in office, and it's been the same teleprompter guy. Now, you mean to tell me that he had the ability to bet in Vegas, and who knows how many people he gave in his family the same information so they can bet at different bookies or different betting sites? I mean, it's just so corrupt, and I don't even blame the teleprompter guy. He's small fries, right? He's betting $10 when Donald Trump is betting 1 million on every bet, right? So I don't even blame the teleprompter guy. He's probably like, shit, it's just normal. It's normal to be corrupt, right? So it's not a big deal. If I know he knows stuff, I guarantee he's not going to jail because he knows stuff. So the only thing he's going to get is a smack on the wrist. First, they said he was suspended with pay. Now suspended without pay. We all know he's getting paid. And they're probably going to tell him, look, you got to go do something else, unfortunately, for now. But keep your mouth shut. Here's this money. Go on. You'll get a pardon, the whole deal. But the corruption is so crazy that it's just mind blowing. But I want to jump over to Todd Blanche confirmation hearings in the Senate that happened this week, and how got another person liar, another corrupt person that they put in. Everybody knows the story. He was Trump personal um, attorney. Then he became the assistant director at the Department of Homeland Security when they fired under Pam Bondi. So he was her assistant. She claims he was in charge of the Epstein file when it's released and everything else, which makes sense because that's Trump's lawyer. So he knows looking at it what can hurt his client or not, right? She threw him under the bus. Hey, that was Todd Blanche. And so he's on the hot seat now. And like everybody else, he just lies, he just deflects, right? And, he wants the seat, he wants that position so bad. First initially, you remember they asked him, they said, "What would you do if you didn't get the position?" He said, "I still love Donald Trump anyway." Those was his words. So are you supposed to love the Constitution in your country? Or are you supposed to love the man in the White House?
See, this is where I think people are getting lost. And it doesn't matter what side you're on, is that this is all about protecting the Constitution. Okay. And you know this, one of the things that the union that you and I work for, I worked for most of my life, but they said that do not put your loyalty into any political party. You have to establish your own agenda because neither political party is really going to stand up for the working class because they both get money from contributions from the very rich. But now the very rich decide themselves who they think is going to win and give the most money. So looking at all of that, we need to make sure that people like Todd Blanche doesn't get in office if possible. Now, if you look at, I think part of the question was, what did you do when you went down to see Ghislaine Maxwell? All that was, we just went down to talk, and then a week later, she gets minimum security if she's in prison at all. So, I mean, Todd Blanche is as corrupt as he could be, and that's why Trump wants him there.
A couple of the questions they asked him. about the $50,000 bribe in the brown paper lunch bag that the FBI gave to Tom Holman in the Department of Homeland Security, in that role, and that the Justice Department dropped the case and told the FBI to drop the case. Yeah, we're having with the money. Know what he said? I'm not familiar with that case. I, that's all he has to say. Nobody looks at it and says, "What the hell you mean? How can you be in that position and you're not familiar um, with that case?" They asked him about Ghislaine Maxwell. Why did you have that meeting by yourself? No explanation for it. They literally just do whatever they want to do, and there's nothing nobody can do about it because they've been placed in those high positions for one reason, to serve and protect Donald Trump.
And you look at this whole speech last night, I'm going back to that. Had been put together again, in my opinion, in the Situation Room. Okay, they had to get together and put all this stuff together in the Situation Room. And it's how do we put in the people in positions that we need them, like Todd Blanche. We need a Todd Blanche, another crook in that position. Okay, how do we do that? So all this stuff being planned out. Now, I know people get frustrated and they get tired of all the stupidity. They get tired of and frustrated with all that's going on. But I think, and this was said last night, that people are getting tired of all the confusion and disruption in this country by Donald Trump. And it was a journalist saying that. They're getting tired of it. And so that when you look at them putting crooks in control, be it Todd Blanche or someone else, people are getting tired of that. Now, does that mean it's going to stop? It will only stop when the voters demand it. It will only stop when we take to the streets and demand it. It will only stop when we get the crooks out of office. Because I said, and you agreed in one of the previous podcasts, part of the problem is the voters. You know, being a thief it cannot become normal. Being having no morals cannot become normal. And what happens is we're saying, oh well, Joe Biden did this, so Donald Trump should get by with that, or Obama did this, so it's okay if Trump did. No, let's have as voters, regardless of what party you're in, let's establish that set of morals again that protects the Constitution. We can disagree on all other bunch of other things, but let's not disagree on that. Let's not disagree on the corruption should stop. Let's not disagree on that people like Donald Trump should not be allowed to rape the American public. Let's agree that the tariffs, as ruled by the judge, were illegal, and now the American people have to pay back $81 billion to the people that were charged the tariffs. Let's agree that those things have impact on us. Let's agree that the Iranian war was illegal and it's costing the Americans at the grocery store, at the gas pump. It's all there. Let's agree. We can define a different path, and it may be different ideas from different parties, but let's agree on those things. Let's agree that freedom matters the most.
Agreed. So let's move on to the shooting in Maine of the young Hispanic gentleman who was a father, a husband, and how many times do we have to have somebody gunned down in the street in order for us to wake up and say, this is not law enforcement? That individual, they put his name out there. I haven't gotten it yet. I was told they put his name out there. We'll have to do some research on that. But they said that he's been in 4 or 5 different law office or law enforcement positions, and that he was removed from each of them. They said that his ex-wife said that she got a call from him asking her to vouch for him and his character.
Now you're talking
and
about the person that did the shooting.
they did the shooting, right?
Okay, okay.
And that she said that she believed that he had PTSD and he should not have a gun.
David back in November brought up that he had accepted a job with ICE. I thought of that it was just a delusional thing because I'm used to him talking crazy, so to speak. So I said, yeah, sure you are, buddy. You know, I didn't realize that he was actually working for ICE until yesterday, and I was completely shocked because I'm like, how do you keep getting into these jobs where you're around guns all the time? I asked him what was going on. He told me that I don't need to be answering questions for anybody, that all I needed to know was that it was a justified shooting and that he did do it. And he claimed that this man had tried to run him over. And I said, I don't see that in anything, and I've watched it from all angles. All I seen is how the car was going in circle after the fact. And then he's like, well, I need you to lie about my character because this is what it comes down to is my character. I don't want you talking about any of the abuse in our relationship. Like, this is literally about me, actually. I told him that I was not going to lie for him, that I've waited years to speak my truth. I've been silenced long enough, and now I need to come out with everything because a man lost his life. So it was abuse, not only to me, but to our daughter. And even being divorced from him, I've dealt with harassing phone calls, threats of him wanting to kill me. I believe that this man was murdered. I believe that David's mental health played a part in what happened. I think what happened was he was standing there during that operation, had a PTSD moment and hit fight or flight mode. And unfortunately, a man lost his life due to it.
And that's a problem that we have, that ICE is just hiring anybody, any old body. And that's what happens when you have unqualified folks. The question becomes, how do we deal with it? Because every person out there, I believe, who's affected by this, not just the victims, because the victims should they most definitely be filing lawsuits, but every individual who had to have their children witness somebody being pulled out of a vehicle unnecessarily and beaten or killed or dragged off for no reason, they should be filing lawsuits against Homeland Security or ICE or both.
Yeah, I think do it on both fronts because what's happening is they've been given the green light to mistreat people. People have been blinded with those rubber bullets. They've been blinded with chemicals. The United States government are using these things to stop protests. Now, they always say the same thing, Al. Oh, well, the person that we killed was at fault. Now, come on. Now, we've seen those. We've seen videos of those. Not true. Okay? Not true. You know, how can it be that all the beatings and all the abuse and all the killings were justified? That just isn't practical. Now I go back to the civil rights movement and the police and the National Guard beating and shooting people with no weapons. I mean, we're repeating, unfortunately, we're repeating a history that should have taught us something other than go back and do it again, you know? And so I think we need to take up the cry, not just have the victims' families sue, but have those communities sue because it has affected that community. All right. The extra police and all that is affecting the community's income tax dollars. Okay. Interfering with my right to protest, I should be able to sue over that. Okay. Me watching this stuff on TV, even though I'm distant from it, is very unsettling. And I think that there should be multiple law groups out there getting these people together, saying, look, we'll represent you without you paying any fee until we collect. And we should do it by community. We shouldn't lump everything into one. We need to fight fire with fire. And we need to be starting fires all across this country where ICE is abusing their power. Now, when you say they're not trained, To me, they're hiring people out of the white supremacist group. They're hiring people that have criminal records. They're hiring people that this is their way of feeling important, and not hiring people that say, look, we believe in law and order. But at this point, ICE says we will kill people and we're not going to be prosecuted. That's a message that Trump likes. He put that across. When Trump called all the individuals into Washington, D.C., after he got rid of the old timers, and said, from now on, if they spit, you hit. That was a directive of saying, be violent with these people.
So the victim, Johan Guerrero, may he rest in peace. May his family get the justice they deserve. But the shooter, the murderer, was David Brulette. I hope I'm pronouncing this right, but if I'm not, who gives a damn? All right. He's the one that actually done the shooting. He's the one that has PTSD. He's the one that his wife and his daughter spoke out against what happened. But it's not him. This should be the target of our rage. It's ICE itself, because they should never put a gun in this man's hand, because it's ICE's problem. It's Donald Trump's problem. And Stephen Miller, who's at the heart of all this, people need to make sure his name gets out there, right? Because he's the one that is an architect behind the ICE and the deportation program and what they're doing to folks. Those murderers fall on his lap, and he's sitting right next to Donald Trump. So the buck stops with them.
I agree with you. And what's so disturbing is there's no satisfying their appetite to get rid of people. And we talked about this in a previous podcast. Just north of here, there's 15,000 Haitians that were here legally. Trump tried to have them take their legal status away. A judge ruled against him. He appealed it. And of course, then Trump won. And he's destroying our communities. Now, of course, I call it the white racist supremacist group. They're happy, but they don't know what they're doing to that community or doing to this country. So, and I agree with you on ICE. I think they just pull people off the street, regardless of their background, regardless of their morals, regardless of whether or not they can be able to control themselves. As in this, in this guy, he's going to claim he couldn't control himself because of the PTSD. And none of them have been arrested. That's killed people. Now, if you and I were on a picket line and someone was shot, not killed, shot, what do you think would happen?
There'd be an investigation, and somebody would get arrested for shooting somebody.
And they
probably with the full extent of the law.
Yeah, and they would make it unlawful for us to picket. And that's where they want to do now, except for that it's the reverse. We'll kill you, if we're making you too afraid to protest. Okay, and that's their goal, and that's going to be their goal. And I'm shifting gears a little bit. That'll be their goal at the polls on the midterms is to create fear.
And I think they're at this point they're in a no-lose situation, right? Because they can continue doing what they're doing. If somebody decides to shoot back, then it's, oh hell, ICE is under attack. They become the victims, right? No matter how many people they kill, they're going to try to justify it. One of them get hurt, the rule of law is under attack, right? But at some point, people was going to have to make decisions, right? Do I let these agencies take my family members away from me forever, or do I fight back? That's unfortunate that it's going to come to that, but it's going to come to that because, Lord forbid, my family members, my children, my grandchildren, I'm going to do whatever I have to do to make sure I see them again. You're not, it's not going to be any other way. And I shouldn't have to be put in that position, right? It should be a process here that allows folks to say, look, if there's a mistake, you're going to be treated fairly by the law, and then you'll be brought back. Not sign these papers saying what we did to you was legal, or you didn't see us kill somebody and agree to get out of the country or
Right.
disappear. I mean, this has been going on in America forever, just not at this level. So
Right. I mean, racism has been here forever. For and now I have a hard time understanding what is the white supremacist group afraid of, or what are they trying to prove? I can't grasp that because what they stand for is immoral. You know, their thoughts are immoral. Their thoughts aren't for one unified country. It isn't their thoughts aren't for liberty and justice for all. Neither is Donald Trump's. You know, that's not his interest. Even though he laid his hand, it wasn't a Donald Trump Bible, but he laid his hand on the Bible and said he would swore to protect the Constitution. He's done everything but. I mean, we have to be concerned about that speech last night and speak it out to everyone now, because his goal is to have another civil war. His goal is to separate the United States of America, if not control it militarily.
let's switch over to the death of Lindsey Graham and how quickly they put his sister. I'm sorry, I gotta laugh to keep from crying, right? They put his sister in a U.S. Senate seat. These are the same people that are running around screaming DEI hires, and I don't want to hear any of that. She only has 6 months in the seat. This is one of the most important positions in this country. And you put the sister, an unqualified sister, in the seat of that person. And for folks who are mourning Lindsey Graham, I'm going to be honest with you and tell you that I don't give a damn that Lindsey Graham's dead. What I do care about are the children that were in the Epstein files that were raped, and he was there. Now, to be in fairness, um, Zasha Riley in his interviews never once said that Lindsey Graham didn't rape him. But you can't be at pedophile parties as a U.S. Senator or a Supreme Court Justice or the President of the United States or a U.S. Congressman from Ohio and say that's okay, that you're at a pedophile party. So he's dead. Good riddance. I hope the next person that their state elects is not a pedophile. And I don't want to hear his sister talking about he was a great man. He acted like he was homophobic, but we know what his lifestyle was. He never said he was protecting children. He never once came on a show and said, we got to get to the bottom of this Epstein file list. We got to do them justice, because he knows he's involved. He was involved, and now he's dead. That's one less pedophile pervert that's on this earth. So I know you have different feelings because you want him to suffer while he's here. My thoughts are that the more of them that are gone, the less children suffer.
I um, would much rather have seen the victims get justice, have Lindsey Graham put on trial, found guilty, put in prison. After he was in prison, I don't care what happened to him. Now, him dying has only made this world better. Okay. But I wanted some justice for those people so they can get past what he's done. You know, and it's the same thing for all the other pedophiles. I want to see them be put on trial, be convicted, be put in prison, isolation, no windows, never get out, and they can die there. That's justice. Okay. I want them to suffer, because the death penalty, that's not suffering. You put somebody out of their misery. Okay. That's not suffering. I want them to suffer because they made these children, whether it be underage girls or boys, they made them suffer, not only then, but have suffered all their lives about the trauma that they went through through Epstein and his pedophile group. So we kind of don't see eye to eye, but we do. We want to be rid of these people.
Yeah, I mean, I just go back and I think about him in 2015 where he was attacking Donald Trump and saying how this man was a grifter and a thief and,
Yeah.
and everything he said was true,
Right.
right? And next thing you know, he's kissing his ass. John McCain he claimed was his best friend. Donald Trump insulted him repeatedly. He never once stood up. He's spineless. I think he was part of the pedophile ring, and wherever he's at, he deserves to be at. So any of those folks running around, you don't just get to have prestige because of the position you held. It's the life that you lived. And if the two conflict, then that means that the lesser one took over because you weren't able to rise above that. So he had a guy part of a pedophile ring happened to be a sitting U.S. senator. He happened to be Donald Trump's right-hand man. He developed that out of nowhere. So to me, he's a hypocrite, he's a liar, and he's part of a pedophile. He was part of a pedophile ring. And then to have his sister be placed in his position shows you how scared they are. They want to make sure whatever they tell her to do, she'll do. No questions asked, none.
Right.
And they know she's not going to run for the seat in the fall because if she does, they probably would lose that Senate seat, or it would be definitely be challenged. So they're going to be able to groom somebody else to be ready for the fall while she's their yes person right away.
Right. Well, that's a pattern. They put people in place that aren't experienced. It would be Hegseth and on down the line. Kash Patel, the whole group. He's gotten rid of the experienced people and put in inexperienced people. And if we had the experienced people as an example, still in the military, the generals and that type of thing, like that, we wouldn't be in the Iranian war. But going back to the pedophile group, I hope they all suffer. I hope they all are convicted. I hope they all suffer. And I hope they all are put behind bars. And they're miserable for the rest of their life. To me, that's payment. Lindsey Graham got out easy. He died. I think that's unfair to the victims.
Yeah, and Putin probably killed him.
Well, it's kind of interesting. I saw a couple of things now. Lindsey Graham was not, I don't care. I mean, it's none of my business what sexual orientation it is, but he claimed he was straight and all this, but he never married and he lived by himself. But somebody found him at 2:00 in the morning. Now, I mean, I'm living by myself now, and I wasn't partying. So how that happened, So
I never thought about that. We got to find out who he was, what the guy's name is that found him at 2 a.m. in the morning. The young college kid that found him. Did I say that?
Yeah. Oh, and probably was one of his aides, but did I say that too? It's people will, I mean, they're going to sing his praises because that's what Donald Trump is doing. But the fact of it is, he was a miserable person in terms of a human being. And, I had an attorney tell me one time, not long ago, I was like, well, happened to be a divorce. I said, well, I'm going to wish her well. And she said, no, because I told her everything that happened. She said, she doesn't deserve that. Just wish her the life that she deserves. And that's what I would do with all the pedophiles. The life you deserve is in prison, isolated, away from everyone. The life that the victims deserve is justice. Finally, to be released from the nightmare they've been living.
Well, folks, we've come to the end of another episode. I want to thank folks for watching. Please don't forget to hit the share, like, and subscribe button below because we want to make sure we keep this fight going. And please leave your comments. I'm interested in what you're thinking, unless you're a far right-wing MAGA nut. And you already know I don't give a damn what you're thinking. So until next week, let's stay in the fight and stay engaged. Peace.
Thinks it is. segment of Al's Joint is brought to you by J-Pack Trucking.